Season 4, Episode 4, Ker-Choo, Dusty and Crusty for the love of power tools. It's time to put the lid on dust, Trajce advocates. Engineered stone, silica exposures, this has all been in the media of late. The trio, Alan, Trajce and Sara, discuss who is vulnerable to these exposures. Alan argues the case that even when a business adheres to the workplace advisory exposure standards for respirable dust, it does not matter when evaluated by a regulator. Trajce reminds us that dust is everywhere. Sara begs the question then, are you an intentional designer or an accidental designer? She argues that making decisions that impact on workers and systems may cause accidental trade-off. She pays tribute to a friend and mentor, Peg Pennard of St. Louis Obispo County. Enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to the Why Work podcast series. You are listening to Trajce Vitkovsky, Sara Pizzell and Alan Girl. I want to talk about, I was thinking of W.S. Burroughs. Remember the American modern day poet? And I was thinking of bug powder dust. That's just how my mind works.
Tell us about it, Trajce.
Well, I won't talk about Burroughs now, another one of my more modern favourites, but I do want to talk about dust. It's so funny, I thought of Burroughs.
Ker-Choo makes me want to sneeze.
Dust.
Yeah, go on.
Burroughs, bug powder dust, and then dust. Ker-Choo, yeah. Dust. And of course there's been a lot of discussion about dust, of course, silica
respirable dust,
and
yes.
so on. And I was thinking about someone I befriended on a plane, and now because this person works for Hilti, the upper end power tools, and Hilti have been doing a lot of work, Hilti, the power tool brand, a lot of work in improving, and this is something right up your alley, Sara, improving systems, in this case, dust-related harm. They also specialise in, obviously, noise and vibration, emerging technologies, just keeping harm to that lowest reasonably practicable point. And these tools are like the bee's knees of power tools.
Have you got some Hilti in your garage?
No, I don't do power tools, not with butterfingers like this. However, I respect others who are into home renovations, etc. I know my limitations.
And you want a promise for some power tools just because you're mentioning
No, not at all. However, I have Dr. Martin Sterling, who provides some excellent webinars on how Hilti, as the brand, again, we're not sponsored by Hilti, this particular entity goes about trying to make the work for those who use power tools a safer place.
I want more power tools. They're so empowering for a woman to use power tools. I was so proud when I bought like a drill.
That's a great play on words, empowering, power, and women.
That's right. Cool. My lawn mower is like, yeah, go girl.
Yeah, well, look, power tools are great. But I know my limitations and I don't use them. What about you, Alan? Are you a power tools kind of person?
I love power tools. Sara, we need to go on a power tool adventure.
Power tool adventure.
At the expo or something. So, Alan, can I ask your brand of power tool?
Hilti, of course.
I don't have any Hilti power tools, so I don't know what they're like. I'm sure they're excellent.
Might need to go shopping now.
Google, these things rock. But what I'm impressed by this particular company is just the level of education going out there. And it got me thinking about dust.
So you're using the expression dust loosely. You're referring to respirable fibres or particles.
Nanoparticles.
Silica exposures.
Stop. Yeah, I am using the word dust loosely because there is dust in timber, dust in marble. We're probably inhaling dust right now, a certain type of dust.
Oh, right. So the engineered stone arguments about we've got to wipe out all engineered stone. I'm like, does that mean we get rid of all concrete? And what are we talking about?
It's in the Earth's crust, so I'm told, silica. But my point is...
you go to the beach and that's silica.
It's dust.
At least in Queensland.
Yeah, exactly. So my point, it's everywhere. It's on the Earth. So I would prefer the conversation around a person who's going to be cutting stuff with power tools is probably going to expose him or herself or themselves to dust. So why don't we focus on inventing and improving the process, the systems, the protocols, the supervision, the prosecution. I'm all for all that to make sure that we've all got a lid on, no pun intended, we've got a lid on the dust.
Okay, so this is comparable to my discussion about psychosocial hazards. Who's vulnerable and why? And which work system causes those vulnerabilities and why? Rather than addressing all things to all people where any dust everywhere, right? Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about in the psychosocial space as well for workplace risk management.
Yeah, so
it's like you can't do everything for all. So what's the real problem? How is it contextualized?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, so don't demonise, for example, one specific dust-related or one nanoparticle. I'm not referring to legacy stuff like asbestos, etc. No, I'm talking about the here and the now. So don't demonise the one, but let's understand and we do understand to the extent the inherent dangers, obviously, with the respiratory-related illnesses, but let's be a little bit more pragmatic and anticipatory in how we approach this broader rubric, dust, and let's see how we can make things better in terms of how do we contain it. And that's what I want where the conversation
Well, I think the technology is developing to have better containment, but one of the problems, at least from a prosecution perspective, is that there's no clearly defined point where you can say, I'm complying with the law and I won't get prosecuted. Now, there'll be people in the audience right now who'd say, oh, Alan, that's the work exposure standard and workplace exposure standard, but that's not the case. So I'm looking after a company at the moment that's been prosecuted, and the regulator, in that case it's the New South Wales regulator, is saying that if you don't do everything possible, you're not doing everything that's reasonably practicable, and therefore the WES doesn't matter, or the workplace exposure standard doesn't matter. So for my client, they're saying, but we were well below the WES, but the regulator's saying you still didn't do everything you could do, so therefore you've committed an offence. What does that mean? That means you've got to be thinking about masks, respiration devices. You've got to be thinking about wetting down. You've got to be thinking about vacuuming, which is where your clients' tools are going to be so important. You've got to be thinking about ventilation. You've got to be thinking about the products you're cutting. And if the discussion's about engineered stone, it's sort of narrows the scope of the conversation, but we're not staying at engineered stone. We're talking about concrete. We're talking about dirt roads, timber,
marble.
Not so much in Australia yet. The conversation about timber is mainly in the UK.
That's not a conversation.
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah. But if you're operating a quarry, we're talking about the dirt roads, so many different things that produce dust. You're asking about vulnerable people. Well, if you walk through the city and they're cutting concrete, it'll be hundreds of people walking past that workplace who are breathing in the concrete dust.
Okay, so the term that I use generally in work design is, are you an intentional designer or are you an accidental designer? And let me just throw this past you, because if you're an accidental designer, you're making a decision that impacts on people's work, but it may be, not robust, not think about the entire life cycle of that worker or that product and that system. And there are consequences of decisions that you make that you've not considered the fallout from, how to mitigate this. So a lot of people are making decisions in a workplace, but they're almost accidental designers versus intentional design. And I think what you're talking about is sometimes these funny rules, regulations that come out as almost being an accidental designer, but they didn't really think about the massive impact of that decision. And you can apply that to respirable dust, you can apply that to psychosocial, manual tasks, you can talk about the high consequence material unwanted events management. You apply that to many things. Are you an accidental designer or are you an intentional designer?
Yeah, because there's so much reaction, and often the state is very quick to respond and react, and so obviously that's sometimes relevant and immediate intervention. But then the conversation sort of dies down to the next crisis, the next issue, or next fad, or next political cycle.
That's right.
Call it what you will. But for those who are still in that industry, and in this case, those involved in construction and other aspects, that concern still remains. So I would rather the debate be more holistic or integrated, like a whole of design approach about how, irrespective of what task it is that you're doing, there will be exposure, and then you of course rank the level of exposure and you respond with, well, let's use specific technologies and let's opt in with industry to try and help. That's another thing.
Well,
I'd like
I think
to see that.
most bigger businesses would not be concerned about safety standards improving and improving over time. But what they want is they want certainty. They want to know that if they're doing, they want to know that they can demonstrate without doubt that they're complying with the law. It's not really about what's required of them. It's being able to say, I'm doing everything that I'm required to do to satisfy the law.
It wouldn't it be nice if it was more, more
Beyond
than
that, not
yeah.
just to satisfy the law, not just to pass an audit, right? But how are you really constructing good design, full stop?
And then it's assumed that the C-suite will go, yeah, this is great, and the world will be a better place. But Alan, you and I know we're old,
crusty
enough to know. We've been around the oceans a few times.
There.
We're off to know.
I just want to clarify, I am not crusty.
All right. And
I don't know. I
old.
call you guys. Remember that term? I called you guys legal counsel, and my universe gets to be design counsel.
Yeah, all right. We're seasoned seafarers on the voyage that is the law, right?
Yeah, not
of
the journey, but the
ocean.
voyage.
You're taking us back on a journey.
No. I like voyage better.
Voyage.
Right?
Voyage.
Voyage.
Okay, but here we are on the ship of fools, which is the ocean that is the law, and really as you said before, and I really have to agree unequivocally, are we complying? How do we know we're not going to be prosecuted? We're not going to be in trouble? And there's a disconnect. No.
So much in research in OHS, and I graduate OHS students.
And here is it.
And there's nothing dusty about Sarah.
There's nothing dusty or crusty.
Some days.
Unless it's a big night. There's nothing dusty or crusty. Look, and it's like, look at how great this can be improved. Here's the evidence and the data, and they'd go, yes, but will we get in trouble?
Well, I think dust is a wonderful example because you can. There's no end to what you can do.
No.
So I suppose the end is you've got people in moon suits.
No, the end is ashes to ashes.
Dust to dust.
It's the alpha and the omega, mate.
Yeah.
It's dust.
What do you guys think about some of the screening tools? Because I hear people say the screening tools look like they're great, the technology that audits, but in fact, sometimes they're not contextualized to the task that you're doing, and there are some problems with some of the detection technology as well. Like they put it in the cab of an operator or something in mobile plants.
There's also real problems about the formula they use. So they use the 8 weeks averaged
exposures.
And that's often not a true reflection of what's happening in the workplace.
Yeah,
because dust is everywhere.
It might be that the workers are exposed to 5 minutes of exposure at a time. They're not exposed to 8 weeks exposure.
And so I'm more interested in that acute task. I'm going to cut a bench, cut a slab of concrete
floor,
tile. I'm going to cut the perfect.
I'm going to be working in a tunnel, which is made out of concrete.
And that's got everything. That includes, I recall when marble tiles were being laid for the bathroom extension.
In your home?
Yeah, Renee miscalculated the price. It was not per square.
Wife number 2. Right.
Wife number 1. There is only one. It's the 1 and 2. All right, wife number 12.
We love you, Renee.
But, so I recall specifically that, and this is just a slight digression, she thought it was, because you know when you buy tiles, it's...
Trajce, hold on a second. Marble bathroom.
Yeah, the black BMW.
How do you afford all of this?
Listen, I digress. I really shouldn't have introduced this, but it's too late now.
You're here.
So have you ever, look, when you buy tiles, right, you buy per square...
meter here?
Meter.
Right.
Well, that's what Renee thought. It's that's a really good price. It was
because there were 900 mils or something.
10 centimetres or something.
Oh,
just add another 0 to the quote, and it was like, no. So anyway,
and she signed the dotted line.
Well, no, she had time to think about it. There's no, it's a good bathroom. We'll just do it. That's how.
So you got the marble tiles. Remember the dog fence? What did the dog fence cost you?
The dog was $350, but the fence was like $21,000.
Have you seen the fence?
Oh, it's a hell of a fence.
It's a hell of a fence.
I think it's a hell of a bathroom now too.
But all I remember was this poor fellow who, he had to cut these very, very finicky tiles. He's cutting away. The dust was just flying everywhere, and it just struck me. So it's those
As a homeowner,
guys.
Are you liable because they're contracted?
No, I'm not the PCBU. The builder was, but the builder then subcontracting is that murky.
Exactly.
No, definitely not an owner builder. No. Just for the record, no. Like I said, not into power tools, not into heavy lifting. No.
Wannabe in power. Sarah is wannabe into power tools for the record.
All right.
Okay.
This could be good. But it was funny. The dust struck me that how are you going to enforce that? How are you going to police? Here he is, a tiler or a young, probably got his apprentice doing it.
Well, the tools are getting so much better because a lot of them have vacuums on them,
and that's the answer. Yeah, and the answer is
it helps.
You mean extraction systems, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, look, it helps because I don't think we're going to. I guess the point I'm making in this, and this might be controversial to some of our listeners with certain leanings, you are not going to escape dust.
And you're not going to escape anxiety among
just
humans in the
tell me about
workplace.
To be anxious is to live.
Yeah,
To be anxious is to live is to be
Dusty is to
anxious.
live.
That's right. That's
To be-
right.
You're not living.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been dusty a few times. Now, look, my point is this. Yeah, anxious. Yep, tick that box. Two things are certain in life: anxiety and dust.
All right.
And I'm telling you this.
Death and taxes
Otherwise,
and lawyers.
tell it
Right.
there is dust on Earth. We live with it. Now let's minimise as much of this acute exposure as we possibly
For
can.
those who are most vulnerable to
Exactly.
Yeah. And why are they vulnerable?
I just want us to think like that as a society. Say, you know what, dust is around. Okay.
I think you should say that about lots of risks.
That's what I'm saying.
Achieving
It's a
zero is
psychosocial-
nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so easy to say banned, and I
Right.
appreciate some people have sustained and are suffering some
Fibrosis
injury.
is a horrible way to die.
I understand that just as much as any other catastrophic event, such as death by drowning in a non-respirable environment. Let's see if we can minimise it to almost zero. That'd be wonderful. And at work.
Shit happens, yeah.
And it
when you
does.
talk about zero harm, I have a statement here from a girlfriend who used to be county board of supervisor in San Luis Obispo and the county mayor in San Luis Obispo, California.
So
Very dear
American.
friend of mine, Peg Pinard, and
like the name.
she was
Peg.
I like the
Peg,
name.
and
I
she
do
was
like the name.
responsible
You don't get
for.
many pegs here.
No.
Is that
it's-
an American kind
Yeah,
of
it's
name?
American.
Margaret
And
is
the
what it would
county
come
and
from.
the whole county
Margaret.
thing.
Oh, really?
You know, it was just
Well,
done with it.
we've got great wineries all throughout
Yeah.
California.
Oh, you have to.
Yes, that's
Chardonnay,
right.
It's very nice. I've got a California Chardonnay in the fridge.
Do you
Thank
know,
you.
in San Luis Obispo County, I digress, but there's, Penfolds actually has a winery.
Wow.
I'd ride my bike past a Penfolds winery in San
there
Luis
you go.
Obispo, California.
Wow.
Go figure.
Okay, sorry. Tell me about your
Anyway,
friend Peg.
okay,
Tell us about
Peg,
Peg.
Peg is marvelous. Peg was responsible for a lot of advocacy in the county. So she helped with an oil spill cleanup. She helped
Cool.
galvanize the community response.
We need more Pegs.
She was in the Peace Corps, right? So this is this kind of person who passionately believes in something and then puts her money where her mouth is and invests. I have a colleague of mine from the mining community says to me, I asked, do you have bacon and eggs on the plate, and we want to find out what did the chickens give, but what did the pig give? I want to know if there are enough pigs in the room, right? Chickens just laid some few eggs, right? That was easy for them, but who gave up some skin, right? So Peg Pinard's that skin giver. She's got much, she brings it.
Yep.
Okay.
Bring skin to the game.
Yeah, some pork, right? Yep.
Oh, I know where you're going with that, but I
Peg the
love it.
pig.
No,
that's Pepper.
that sounds horrible.
That's
no,
Pepper.
no.
That's Peppa Pig.
That's Peppa.
Pepper. Okay.
Peppa.
Yeah.
In America,
Poor
yeah,
pig.
that's right. There's a little cartoon in Australia called Peppa Pig, right?
Yeah, Peppa
all the
Pig.
three
Yeah,
toddlers
yeah.
love it.
Yeah, it's
Peg
British.
helped. Is it UK?
Yeah, Peppa
Oh,
Pig,
whatever.
yeah.
Definitely not American.
No,
Pig.
She helped galvanize the community to combat an oil spill and huge advocacy. But the topic that's in mind right now, based on what you were talking about, is smoking ordinances. Okay, and Peg wrote to me. We were talking about how she helped institute what became Western world legislation around smoking ordinances in public spaces. Right, Peg Pinard.
Peg.
Yep, Peg Pinard, the County Board of Supervisor, past County Board of Supervisor, and also the mayor in San Luis Obispo, California. And she talked about zero harm policy, and this is what you were talking about with the exposure to respirable dust, right?
Yeah.
How and the whole issue of how on earth do you tackle something like a zero harm agenda? And she said the problem with zero harm is that it's almost like you have to prove that harm exists first and then have to walk it back, and it's often hard to do when harm could be something related to a long-term effect, like, sound, acoustics, noise exposures, and you're talking also about respirable dust, the acute versus the cumulative exposures, and that's sometimes something hard to do. What helped her in some of the institution of smoking ordinances is that they came across the producers of cigarettes they came across their own documents that had research already arguing and proving that harm exists. So once you can identify that, but that was the clincher for them to get some of these ordinances across. And they had ordinances to prevent smoking in public places. So you can't ban smoking, but you can prevent it so that those who might be vulnerable aren't exposed. Prevent the sale of cigarettes, tobacco. Remember, you could get it from machines before, vending machines. So they stopped that, ceased that. And there were ordinances about children buying cigarettes, the restrictions there. And how phenomenal to say that you were responsible for something that changed the landscape, the legal landscape in the social world, in the Western world, right?
Yeah, especially
on peg.
1992,
Aaron
the city,
Brockovich of
the Aaron Brockovich, that's right, of smoking. In let's see,
but that's a great example of the advocacy, as you said, that people power and
phenomenal,
and
right?
It's an environmental concern, definitely a health concern, and saying, how can we acknowledge this harm and then use that evidence to shape attitudes and influence beliefs?
Because you're going to get some powerful companies there, right? Some powerful companies. So in 1990, the city in San Luis Obispo prohibited smoking in public places, including bars and restaurants, and they were, to their knowledge, the first municipality in the world to do so.
Is this PEGS?
Peg Pinard, yeah. In 1992, the city passed an ordinance prohibiting the sale of cigarettes or other tobacco products from vending machines.
Wow.
And in 1997, the city passed the ordinance which prohibited the sale of tobacco products to minors and self-service displays
Which
of
now
tobacco products.
is when you think about, you've got the shutters, so grey, the cigarette advertising, you've got the shutters in the tobacconists where they open them up. Once you ask what it is that you need, they've got them behind so you can't see them. There are no visual displays. So all of these ripple effects. And
in 2010, the Comprehensive No Smoking Ordinance. And now this has relevance because, like your Crown Casino here in Australia, recently a waiter sued for secondhand smoke causing them lung cancer.
Secondary smoke, yeah. Look, I think a media report, I don't know if that, it's been reported. I think it's going through the courts. Do you know about that one, Alan?
No, I don't.
No, it's in the media. 12th of September 2023 is an article. I saw a waiter with terminal lung cancer suing Melbourne's Crown Casino. And again, it's one of those difficult things to talk about, that cumulative exposure, right? Alleging in court documents that his job in the venue's high rollers room where smoking was permitted has contributed to this condition. Metastatic lung cancer in 2020, 6 years after he began working full-time in the mahogany room. The mahogany room sounds rich and, those kinds of dark colors, and I can almost picture the smoke, just calling it the mahogany room.
Yeah,
the cigars.
The takeaway for that is those actions and reactions and that just chipping away at changing the mindset. So, with the smoking, to change the room, distance where you have smoke, smoking indoors, prohibited, and so on and so forth, having all the different vending machine, directions, all those ordinances, that is definitely proactive to know that we've got the evidence to show that this stuff is harmful. People are going to keep smoking. They're just going to smoke. Awareness.
So you've got to look at, I guess you guys have to argue, you guys, plural meaning lawyers everywhere, have to argue negligence, right? Where it was kind of known exposures that caused...
Or ought to have known.
It caused, it materially contributed to whatever state of existence of being. So those kinds of arguments to say there was no other way that this person likely got this other than their work. Is that what you'd have to argue?
Well, there's reasonable, on the balance of probabilities.
In Australia, it says, according to this media report, that smoking in indoor public spaces, an ordinance was created. It was banned in 2007. Yet the Crown and the government continued to expose hundreds of workers and regular patrons to tobacco smoke for well over a decade. That's what this report says, this news article.
Yeah, it's probably why, I guess, there's absolutely zero tolerance in any... Are you, Alan, in all your visits to various workplaces for work, are there any smoking zones in any of the...
Yes, they do. Yeah,
they do have them, do they?
But it'll be positioned far away from the... So they might have a little hut where people can go.
Like a smoker's hut, like the airports in Dubai, whatever, you've got the Camel sponsored smoking hut, and it's like just this poof of of just
like at Australia Zoo.
On fire.
They have this little
It's sponsored by
cubicle, and
Camel.
it makes the people look like the zoo animals that can go there to smoke, right?
Yeah,
It's this
yeah,
little,
that's what it is,
and you
yeah.
walk past, and it's like they're the
Everyone's
zoo
like,
animals.
yeah, I think there's one in Germany as well. And it's
Really?
and all it is just like grey because everyone's in there.
Yeah.
And it's all sealed, like all the doors, they're all in there inhaling secondary, tertiary, you name it.
Yeah,
Just
that's right.
primary smoke, it's all going in.
You want it, you're exposed to it.
So, Sarah, when you travel far and wide, excluding your international explorations, just Australia, do they have little sort of smoking huts when you go to the mines and other things? Do they have little smoko? Because we still say smoko.
They still say going for smoko, and what that means
Where do they go?
for our American listeners, when you say it's smoko time, it's funny that that's still in the vernacular. Of
course it is,
smoko is actually your break to go have your meal, your snack, your coffee, your tea, but it's called a smoko.
Yeah. So
that's funny. It's in the indoctrined in language, right?
So in the mines, where do they have little smoko rooms, little breakout rooms?
People go outside. People go
so still
outside, maybe
smoking,
outside
yeah.
a crib room or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot. They're just outside a crib room.
Yeah,
a
so
crib room meaning
Occasionally
you're
they smoke in the mine itself.
Ooh.
no.
Don't
They
you
go-
remember there was a prosecution about that?
No, tell
Really?
me.
Yeah. An employee was
kidding.
prosecuted
Whoops.
for smoking in the mine.
Yeah.
Big of Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire."
So Peg was very influential in my
Yes.
life. So when I worked, I've had many lives and working life, and one of my jobs was first in rehab management, and then almost by default, I became the executive director, first temporarily and then long term of a community home care center, more because there was a blowout originally between the original executive director and the director of nursing. They needed somebody to step in, so here I stepped in, right? But managed to turn a lot of things around in that company, and my contact with Peg started then. So I found in some material, in a small memo, there was something reported about the county community health centers about to be handed over to another private entity. They were about to disband the community services, and it was like almost like a little file note, like a little subtext somewhere. I'm like, wait, whoa, isn't that important? So I thought, I'm going to go find out more about this. I was in the business managing community healthcare, and I asked for a meeting from another board of supervisor, and they refused my meeting. And I thought, what? I'm just trying to find out more as a citizen. So I went to, at this time, Peg was no longer mayor, she was county board of supervisor. So I knocked on her door, and she gracefully accepted me to have a meeting. And I met this woman, and I told her what was going on, and she said, hang on a minute, what? So county staff had not alerted the board of supervisors about a divestiture of county assets and services for the community health care. And she said, all right, tell you what, sister, there is a meeting, a community forum once a month. I would ask you to please come to this meeting, but I'm going to let you know that should you stir this pot and this gets taken up and maybe there becomes a change in business and you vie for that business, you're unlikely to get that business because you've stirred the pot. And I was like, challenge on, bring it, right? I've lost it. Either way, we weren't going to be a contender. It was going to go somewhere else. So I thought, okay. So I came to this public meeting, and she said, and you need to do it with a bit of aplomb. You need to do it with a little bit of drama, right? I mean, bring signs, look a little bit obnoxious. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was probably in my mid to late 20s then, and I had a big job role, but still, this was all, fairly new for me to take on the government. Goodness, right? Or to take on a big community issue. But, hey, I'm game. It's a good life experience. Let's go. So I show up at this board of supervisors meeting, and when it came around to community time, I stood there with a little sign, curious about the divestiture of the county board, county community home services, asked the question. Boom! It got silent, and it was such a what response from the administration. The staff had to come up and answer to this, and then it got tabled on the agenda for next month's meeting. So the meeting I attended was sort of sparsely populated, had a few people, some of the people in the community that come every week because they're complaining about the dogs or whatever they complain about. And then next month's standing room only, tickets, line out the door, and the media showed up about the home care divestiture. So Peg's like one of those people that's like, okay, bring it. If there's an issue, we're going to tackle it, but get ready for the ride. And she taught me a lot about that. But I learned from her strength and found my inner strength in this. And yes, it completely changed the course of history in that divestiture of that community home care. They were no longer allowed to proceed with their plans. They had to go out to public tender. Et cetera, et cetera. And the whole process, the issue of due process was challenged. So you have to be that strong if you're going to clean up an oil spill in a community, if you're going to take on a smoking ordinance against very powerful tobacco manufacturers and commercial entities, and you're going to take on something like, big county resources. You've got to be a strong character, don't you?
Yeah, and look at a less dramatic context, a good health and safety representative. The key takeaway for me was that if they are invested in concerns at the workplace, what a good HSR would bring is that passion and that commitment to at least upstream what's going on the floor to the committee. And often, I think you do need that conviction. So your friend Peg has that conviction at a huge level.
There's a price to pay for that level of conviction, that commitment, right? Having skin in the game, being the pig that donates the bacon versus the chicken that just lays a few eggs. That's not much. That's from Tony Egan and the Earth Moving Equipment Safety Roundtable.
So basically, I see. One's making the sacrifice and the other one's lives another.
And another one is you lay a few eggs, but it wasn't that much commitment, right?
Still gets across the road.
Yeah, you can still walk across the road and lay a few more eggs wherever you want, right?
Did you get that?
So,
why did the chicken cross the road? Sarah did.
So, I mean,
I get it.
Gosh, there's problems with whistleblowing, isn't there, in Australia? Tony Hoffman, the nurse who dealt with Dr. Death, the doctor from Bundaberg Hospital, who never was properly credentialed and was escaping complaints about poor surgical outcomes in the US.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Patel.
Jayant Patel.
You're referring to Patel's case,
well,
yes.
It massively affected the nurse who you said is the heart and soul of an organization, Tony Hoffman's life.
Yeah, whistleblowing, it's for another day. We're getting drained here.
Very real, though.
But it's very real. But anyway, for another time. You've been listening to Trajce, Sara and Alan. And if you really enjoyed this show, share this with a friend. Submit your 5-star rating on your favourite podcast streaming service. Keep listening and send in your stories. You can email us at hello@ywork.com.au. And of course, sign in to our newsletter. You can head straight to our website at www.ywork.com.au. We can't wait to learn about the trouble you've seen in the workplace. And remember, none of the things we've talked about today should be construed as legal advice or any other type of advice. We're just here to talk about all things related to work, and we hope you enjoyed as much as we do. We love it. See you next time.